Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I will discuss another important disease of the adrenal glands, which is known as Addison's disease. Addison's disease is also known as primary adrenal insufficiency. It is characterized by inadequate secretion of corticosteroids, glucocorticoids, and mineralocorticoids, resulting from partial or complete destruction of the adrenal glands. It is a relatively uncommon disease with an annual incidence of 10 to 15 cases per 100,000 persons. Female to male ratio is 2:1. Among the ecological factors, the most common cause is autoimmune destruction of the adrenal glands, which accounts for 80% of the cases. The second most common cause is tuberculosis, which accounts for 15% of the cases. Carcinomatous destruction of the adrenal glands, adrenal hemorrhage due to anticoagulants, trauma, coagulopathies, pregnancy, sepsis, and adrenal infarction due to arthritis and thrombosis are other important factors. Patients suffering from AIDS may develop adrenal insufficiency in 30% of cases. Addison's disease can occur in combination with other endocrine deficiencies as part of autoimmune polyglandular syndromes type 1 and type 2, which have some genetic basis. Other uncommon causes of Addison's disease are sarcoidosis, amyloidosis, post-operative, and fungal infections. The clinical presentation is variable depending upon the deficiency of the corticosteroid hormones. Most patients report non-specific symptoms of generalized weakness, fatigue, and anorexia. Some patients may complain gastrointestinal symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, vague abdominal pain, and constipation. Patient may present with psychiatric symptoms like depression, arthralgias, and myalgias. All these symptoms are due to lack of glucocorticoid hormones and abnormal serum electrolyte concentrations like hyponatremia and hyperkalemia. Patients who have deficiency of mineralocorticoid hormones may complain of dizziness and salt craving. Female patients may present with amenorrhea and loss of libido due to loss of cortical androgens. Weight loss is a common presenting sign. Hyperpigmentation is present in most patients. It is more prominent in palmar creases, buccal mucosa, pressure points like elbows, knees, and knuckles, perianal mucosa, and around areolas of the nipple. Surgical scars formed after onset of ACTH excess also become hyperpigmented. Hyperpigmentation occurs due to overproduction of pro-opiomelanocortin hormone, which is a prohormone that is cleaved into ACTH hormone and melanocyte stimulating hormone. This results in increased production of melanin in the body. Orthostatic hypotension is common in both primary and secondary adrenal insufficiency. This table summarizes symptoms, signs, and laboratory findings associated with different hormone deficiencies in primary adrenal insufficiency. Adrenal crisis may occur when onset of adrenal failure is abrupt, for example, in case of bilateral adrenal hemorrhages, or when increased stress occurs in the setting of chronic adrenal failure. Adrenal crisis should be suspected in patients with unexplained catecholamine-resistant hypotension. Symptoms of adrenal crisis may be non-specific, like weakness, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, fever, and altered mental status. Acute adrenal hemorrhage should be suspected if there is a combination of flank pain, hypotension or shock, fever, and hypoglycemia in a deteriorating patient. Death may occur in severe cases of adrenal crisis. Adrenal crisis is rare in the setting of secondary cortisol deficiency because the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone pathway is intact. This photograph shows typical picture of a patient having adrenal insufficiency. Patients are usually thin and lean, having hyperpigmentation of lips, buccal mucosa, areola of the nipples, and other parts of the body. Note that there lies skin pigmentation, but especially deposition in the palmar skin creases, nail beds, and gums. The pressure points like knuckles, elbows, they are usually hyperpigmented. Also, the scar marks of after surgery becomes hyperpigmented. Buccal mucosa is also hyperpigmented in most of the patients. Addison's disease or primary adrenal insufficiency should be differentiated from secondary adrenal insufficiency, in which case there is no hyperkalemia and there is no hyperpigmentation of the skin creases. Septic shock and hypovolemic shock can mimic acute Addisonian crisis. Adrenal hemorrhage may mimic acute abdomen. Weight loss may be confused with hypothyroidism. Gastrointestinal symptoms can be confused with gastrointestinal malignancy. Other diseases which can cause differential problems include myopathies, major depression, anorexia nervosa, hemochromatosis, and salt-losing nephritis. The classic laboratory abnormalities are hyponatremia and hyperkalemia. Hyperkalemia is due to mineralocorticoid deficiency, whereas hyponatremia occurs mainly because of glucocorticoid deficiency. Azotemia can be seen because of hypovolemia. Patients often demonstrate a normocytic normochromic anemia and may also have eosinophilia and lymphocytosis. Mild to moderate hypercalcemia may occur. Fasting blood glucose is usually low normal, but occasionally patient can have fasting or postprandial hypoglycemia. Patients with coexisting type 1 diabetes mellitus and adrenal insufficiency may experience greater frequency and severity of hypoglycemic episodes. Anti-adrenal antibodies can be detected in the sera of patients with Addison's disease. In the outpatient setting, a low morning cortisol value less than 3 microgram per deciliter is sufficient to diagnose adrenal insufficiency, and a high morning cortisol value more than 20 microgram per deciliter excludes the diagnosis. In most cases, a dynamic test is also performed, which is known as co-syntropin or synecthin test. This test determines whether the adrenals are able to respond to maximal stimulation by synthetic ACTH. In standard co-syntropin test, 250 mg of ACTH is given by IV push and serum cortisol levels are measured at 0 and 30 minutes. A normal response is a peak serum cortisol level greater than 20 microgram per deciliter or 550 nanomoles per liter. An abnormal response is defined as a stimulated cortisol level less than 18 to 20 microgram per deciliter at 30 minutes and 60 minutes. This test can be performed at any time during the day. If an individual is receiving glucocorticoid therapy, the dose should be withheld before the test is performed to avoid detection of synthetic glucocorticoids in the cortisol assay. Secondary adrenocortical insufficiency can be distinguished from primary adrenal insufficiency by normal or low plasma ACTH levels after rapid ACTH co-syntropin test, absence of hyperpigmentation, and no significant impairment of aldosterone secretion. Additional evidence of hypopituitarism, hypogonadism, and hypothyroidism also support the diagnosis of secondary adrenal insufficiency. Imaging studies can also help in making diagnosis of Addison's disease. A plain chest X-ray examination may reveal a small heart due to persistent hypovolemia. Adrenal calcifications may be noted on abdominal X-ray film if the adrenocortical insufficiency is secondary to tuberculosis or fungus. Abdominal CT scan can reveal small adrenal glands which indicate either idiopathic atrophy or long-standing tuberculosis, whereas enlarged glands are suggestive of early tuberculosis or potentially treatable diseases. To summarize, remember 5H for Addison's disease: hyperpigmentation, hypotension, hyperkalemia, hyponatremia, and hypoglycemia plus dehydration. Management of Addison's disease involves periodic monitoring of serum electrolytes, vital signs, and body weight. Liberal sodium intake is suggested. Periodic measurement of bone density may be helpful in identifying patients at risk for the development of osteoporosis. Patients should carry a medical alert bracelet and an emergency pack containing hydrocortisone 100 mg ampule, syringe, and a needle. Patients and partners should be educated on how to give IM injection in case of vomiting or coma. Patients who present in emergency ward with suspected adrenal crisis should be treated empirically prior to confirmation of the diagnosis. A blood sample should be drawn for serum cortisol, plasma ACTH, and routine chemistries. The patient should receive immediate treatment with 100 mg of hydrocortisone intravenously, and aggressive fluid resuscitation should be done. Hydrocortisone is continued at 100 to 200 mg per day in divided doses every 6 to 8 hours, and then tapered to physiological replacement if cortisol deficiency is confirmed with the confirmatory test. Provide adequate volume replacement with dextrose saline solution until hypotension, dehydration, and hypoglycemia are completely corrected. Precipitants of adrenal crisis, for example infection, should be sought and treated. Patients with suspected primary or secondary cortisol deficiency and concomitant hypothyroidism should be treated with glucocorticoids first, because correcting thyroid hormone deficiency will accelerate the clearance of cortisol and can precipitate acute adrenal crisis. In cases of chronic adrenocortical insufficiency, give hydrocortisone 15 to 20 mg per oral every morning and 5 to 10 mg in the late afternoon. Or prednisolone 5 mg in the morning and 2.5 mg in the afternoon. In contrast to patients with secondary cortisol deficiency, those with primary adrenal failure also require mineralocorticoid replacement. Usual doses are 0.05 to 0.2 mg per day of fludrocortisone. The dose is adjusted based on the serum sodium level and the presence of posterior hypertension or marked orthostasis. Sick day rule. All the patients receiving glucocorticoid therapy should be instructed to increase their glucocorticoid replacement in times of stress and to receive parenteral glucocorticoids if diarrhea or vomiting occurs. Typical supplementation varies from 25 mg per oral per day of hydrocortisone for minor medical and surgical stress to 50 to 100 mg IV hydrocortisone 8 hourly for sepsis-induced hypotension and shock. Administration of dehydroepiandrosterone 50 mg per oral per day improves well-being and sexuality in women with adrenal insufficiency. Well, how is treatment for chronic adrenal insufficiency monitored? The goal should be to use the smallest replacement dosage of glucocorticoids possible that maintains normal electrolyte levels and good quality of life. Serum cortisol and plasma ACTH levels are not useful for monitoring treatment of adrenal insufficiency. In the end, some key points to remember. Number 1. Adrenal insufficiency is classified as primary, which means failure of adrenals to produce cortisol. Secondary, which means failure of pituitary to produce ACTH hormone. Or tertiary, which means failure of hypothalamus to produce corticotropin releasing hormone. Number 2. Adrenal insufficiency should be suspected in outpatients who have received supraphysiological doses of glucocorticoids for longer than 1 month. In patients in the intensive care units who are hemodynamically unstable despite aggressive fluid resuscitation or have septic shock, and in any patient with signs or symptoms suggesting adrenal insufficiency. Number 3. Adrenal insufficiency is diagnosed with the finding of a 30 or 60 minutes cortisol level less than 18 to 20 microgram per deciliter on a standard dose cosintropin stimulation test. Number 4. Treatment of adrenal insufficiency depends on the condition of the patient. Number 5. Non-stressed outpatients should be treated with replacement doses of hydrocortisone or prednisolone with or without fludrocortisone depending on the type of adrenal insufficiency. Number 6. Stressed patients should receive supplemental glucocorticoids tailored to the degree of stress. Number 7. Adrenal crisis should be treated aggressively using intravenous saline and dextrose, intravenous glucocorticoids, dexamethasone if treatment is being given before random collection of blood for measurement of cortisol and ACTH hormone. Hydrocortisone is given afterwards. Other supportive care and a search for precipitating illness.